My team and I just wrapped up our last launch and we up-leveled everything. In fact, I spent over $250,000 on this launch. And if you're curious how it did, well, I have good news. That's exactly what we're breaking down for you in this episode. So keep listening. Hi, I'm Brandon Lucero, and you're about to experience the new way to thrive in business, entrepreneurship, and life by leaning into who you are, what you love, and standing up for what you want to create. Get ready, because this is where we go against the grain, say no to outdated society norms, and we say yes to change in order to create a happier, more fulfilled world. Welcome to the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. Hey everyone, welcome back to the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. Today, we are going to break down our most successful launch. We just wrapped up this launch, a couple weeks ago. I'm not sure when this will be released, but for me, it was a couple weeks ago from when we were recording this podcast episode. Now, we're going to do a two-part series here. Today is going to be part one, then we're going to release part two next week. So today, in part one, what we're going to do is we're going to go over the strategy and then the numbers. So I'm going to do a complete debrief for you today on what our numbers were, what our process was, what our strategy was, and then what I'm going to do in the second episode that'll be released next week is go over the lessons learned. And let me tell you, there were a lot of lessons learned in this launch. So let's kick this episode off by talking about things that we did differently and the overall strategy. So as most of you probably know, this is our, let me count it real quick. 1, 2, 3, 4, probably our fifth big launch with the Video Forex in the last 3 years. And obviously we've done a lot of little smaller launches. Like when we first launched it, we did a beta program and we did another like beta launch after that and different things like that. And we had our first serious launch. It did about 400,000. And then we did, and this is back in, I think 2018 or 19. And then after that, we did another bigger launch and that one didn't go so well. And we did 180,000. And then we decided to move it and redo like our video series. And we redid a video series last year and we did $900,000. And then later that year, we relaunched it again without affiliates, and we did about 500,000 or 600,000. And I'll just come out and tell you right off the bat what we did in this launch. And this was our biggest launch to date. So in 2021, and we did $1.5 million. Now that's crazy because in 2020, our business did around $2 million in revenue. And we did about 75% of that in the first quarter of this year. Now, a couple big changes that happened this year. Number one is me and my team invested a lot in the actual series itself. If you saw the video series that we used last year versus this series that we did and used this year, it is night and day. And I'm just going to go out on a limb and say it is the best video series in the industry. Now, have I seen every single video series ever in the history of the internet? No. But I feel like it's pretty safe to say it is the best one when you're looking at it from a scripting and messaging point of view, but more importantly, from a filming, editing point of view. I mean, we spent, Matt, would you say it's fair to say 7 months, 6 months putting this thing together? Yeah. Putting this thing together. Everything from the scripting, which I had to rescript. We went from a 6-part video series down to a 5-part video series. So we completely redid or took out the last 2 videos from our previous video series, redid the last video. Then Matt and Jackie and our team basically took that script and they completely, I don't even know what you call it. Matt, what do you call it when you put things in the frames and it's like a screenplay, so to speak?
Yeah, we put it into screenplay format and then broke that into formal pre-production.
Okay. So they put it into a screenplay format and then a formal pre-production kind of format. And basically what this looks like is from my perspective, what it looked like was we took our 4 or 5 scripts and broke it into 80 pages of content, basically, because every paragraph, it was like, here's the angle, here's the shot, here's the transition. And so every paragraph had a different shot, a different location, a different even lens that they might use. And so, I mean, there was hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of breakdowns of what every single shot needs to be, what the location is, what the transition in and out, how are we going to connect it to the next one. And I mean, we would go to one location and we would shoot parts of video 1 and parts of video 3 and parts of video 5 and parts of video whatever. And then they would put it all together. So it took an immense amount of thought and planning on Matt and Jackie's point of view. It took a huge amount of time for me to go through and script it and all of that stuff. I mean, this was like a full-on movie production. That's what it felt like. And I mean, we had a producer. We had people coming and helping us with it. We even had a table of snacks. So like when you go to, you see a movie ever being filmed, they always have like snacks and different things like that. Every shot and location had stuff like that. I mean, it was really, really well planned out, thought through, and it just took a really long time to film, edit, put together, all of that stuff. And I would say it probably took about 6 months to just like film, like get the filming done. And then we had to go to editing, and editing took a while as well. But I will say it was phenomenal. Like it was to this day, I think it's the best piece and form of content or training that we've ever put out in the history of our company. Like it was huge. Now let's talk about the cost of that, because a couple of things that happened in this launch is I also invested the most amount of money into any launch that I've ever invested into in my entire life. So I don't know what the video series itself actually cost me, and it's probably something we should probably figure out. But I will tell you, we had a budget of $15,000, and that's not a very big budget for what I felt like we got. If someone would have said, "Hey, I'm going to hire a contractor who's going to produce a video series like this," I would expect my budget to be anywhere from $40,000 to $60,000 at least to get what we got. But with a $15,000 budget. Luckily, Jackie is in film school. She graduated? She has graduated from film school. That's right. She did last year. And she has a lot of friends from film school that love putting these types of things together. So we were able to have them come out, and we paid them to come out and help us with this. So, we didn't have to pay the expense of like a huge company to come out and do this, just because we had the resources to be able to do a lot of it in-house, but also had a team that wanted to work with us on getting it made. And the budget came in under 15,000, like between Airbnbs, paying the contractors, all of that stuff. It came out under the $15,000 budget. However, there's a lot of other things that are going to go into that cost. So like, Matt and Jackie's time, what did it cost for my internal team, my in-house team, to go put a lot of that stuff together? Our editing team took a while to put all that. So I don't know. I would say it's probably safe to assume anywhere from $20,000 to $30,000 is, or more, maybe, actually, now that I think about it. It probably, it probably did cost us, all said and done, between salaries and different things like that. People had to, we're probably like $30,000 or $40,000, I would say, actually, now that I think about it. But anyways, that's a huge expense just for a marketing or sales mechanism inside of a launch. But the way I was looking at it, and one of the themes that I wanted to bring into this launch was all about growth. It was all about the be, do, have model. Like, we had a goal of $3 million on this launch. And what I wanted to do was basically operate as if we were the team that did a $3 million launch. And the team that does a $3 million launch is the one that goes all out. They're the ones that puts in a lot of time and effort to think through their strategy, to think through the sales mechanism, to think through the ads and get it done to the best that they can. And, if we would have done a $3 million launch, that would have put us in, even at $1.5 million, it puts us in the top 1% of the 1%. But that would have put us at the top of the top. And if we're going to be at the top of the top, then everything needs to be at the top of the top. And so that's what we decided to do. Now, with that also, our best launch to date was 900,000. We did that last year. And I spent about $100,000 in ads. And I figured this launch, I'll spend 150,000. And then Matt and Taylor basically at our executive retreat were like, yeah, no, we should be spending like 200 plus. And that kind of scared me a little bit, but I said, you know what? F it, let's do it. And we ended up spending $242,000 on ads. Had I lost the $242,000 plus the $30,000 or $40,000 that it cost to do the video series, like we just didn't make any of our money back, that would have put me in that would have been a pretty tough spot to be in to continue building the business. So it definitely put me into a level of uncomfortableness. And we'll talk about the lessons on the next episode of what I learned, because there's a lot I learned through that phase. But the outcome gave us $1.5 million, which again is just crazy to think about. I remember when I first got started in the online space, and Mike Filsame and Andy Jenkins created this amazing video series and had this amazing launch on a product about video. And I don't even think I was at a 6-figure business yet. And then they did $1 million on that launch. And this was like, it was almost like the first person who broke the 4-minute mile barrier. Like everyone's like, oh, it's impossible. You can't do $1 million launch. And they did it. And I just said, I just can't even fathom what that looks like. I just can't even imagine. And then here we are 7 years later, and we did over $1 million in a single launch. It's just crazy to think about. So we'll go over the lessons in the next episode. But those are the major things that had changed in this launch. Was that number one, I stepped out as micromanaging or running the launch. So I completely put it in the hands of my team. I gave a lot of visionary direction. So like, hey, here's my thoughts on the video series, and here's my thoughts on this, and here's that. Here's what I think we should do, as far as like launch style goes. But Taylor basically ran the launch. Matt and Jackie basically ran all the marketing as far as, well, the creation of the marketing. So the video series, the ads, all of that type of stuff, the live streams and everything like that. And then Emily and Brittany stepped in, and they did a lot as well. Like handled support, which they've never done before. Brittany handled all the tech and opt-in pages, which we had affiliates, and that was kind of a nightmare getting all of that situated to make sure everything was tracking properly. And Brittany handled a lot of that. Emily came in and was getting a lot of our stuff ready for after the launch. So welcoming the customers, sending out the boxes, getting all of that stuff prepared, handling support as well. And I basically just was like, hey, I'm spending all this money, spending all this time. I'm going to let the team step up. And they totally did. In the past, I would always kind of get in the way and kind of micromanage. And this allowed me the time and the space to focus on serving the clients, showing up for the live streams, mapping things out, and really taking the time to execute on that visionary role, which is working with the students, being in the Facebook group, like answering questions, showing up to the lives, answering the questions, a lot of that type of stuff. And I was able to do that 100%. So with that said, let's move into the actual strategy itself. Here's the overview of the strategy. We opened up Cart in March. So I believe it was like March 8th or something like that, like March 1st or 8th, like the first week of March is when we actually opened up Cart. So we started to work backwards, and we had a goal of 30 to 35,000 leads is what we wanted. So we're like, okay, great. If we want to, have spend $250,000, this is the amount of leads we come in. We can't spend $250,000 in a week and expect 30,000 leads to come in 1 week. It just doesn't work like that. And so we have to look at like, okay, great. How do we build up this huge amount of leads over time? But at the same time, is even if we could get 30,000 leads in a day, I don't want to get 30,000 leads in a day or a week and send them right to the video series. I want a warm-up phase. We need to build up momentum. So we started looking at our runway. And what we decided was March 1st was when we dropped the video series. And then March 8th is when Cart opened. Does that sound right, Matt? Yeah, I think that's what happened. So we decided, okay, we need 3 weeks to generate leads for the video series. So we're going to need to do some kind of training beforehand, and then we can have 2 or 3 weeks to build leads for that training. So what we decided to do when we did our launch last year, when we did the $900,000 launch, we did a pre-recorded training called The Content That Influences. We got people to opt in for that a month before the video series. Then we pushed all those people into the Facebook group, got them ready for the video series, and we build up more momentum and leads for the video series. We decided to change that up a little bit this year. What we decided to do this year was follow the same process. So the video series dropped on March 1st. We decided to give 3 to 4 weeks to build leads up for that video series. And a couple of reasons why we wanted 4 weeks. Again, we can't shove 30,000 leads in a single day. So we wanted to slowly build up. But we had 20 different ads, opt-in ads being run. And what we really wanted to do was find the ad that was converting the best and bringing in the best quality of traffic and scale that ad out. So we actually were split testing for the first week or two, 20 different ads at a lower spend per day to let our ads give us the data on what's converting, what's working, what's not, what's the targeting. And then after that phase, we started to scale it up more and more and more. And then we kind of throw in another ad here and another ad there to kind of test it. But then we started to scale up. And what's happening is when you follow that process, you actually start spending the most amount of money the closest to the release of the video series. And so what I mean by that is like day one, like 4 weeks out, we might be spending $200 a day. Then about 3 weeks out, we might be spending like $500 a day. Then 2 weeks out, we might be spending like $3,000 a day. And then right as in the last week, I believe we were spending like $15,000 a day to drive the leads. And the reason for that is we have something scalable. We have the ad that can scale. We have the copy that's working. We know what's working. And then we spend that most huge amounts of money now that we have the testing done, but also because we want people to opt in as close to the video series as possible so that we aren't making them wait 4 weeks before the release of the video series. So that was kind of our thinking there. Now, before that even happened, we decided to do a workshop. And instead of having a pre-recorded workshop, what we decided to do, having a pre-recorded training like the Content That Influences. So last year, the Content Influences was a pre-recorded 30-minute training that supposedly was supposed to build demand for the video series. And it worked fine. Like it was great, whatever. But what we did this time around is we did a 2-day free workshop. This is something people would normally charge for. And we had about 5,000 to 6,000 people register for this. We had anywhere from 700 to 800 people show up live with us during this training. Now, this training absolutely killed it. This was the most amount of people I've ever had to show up live to anything we've ever done. The questions were phenomenal. I mean, I would ask a question like, does this make sense? And people in the chat would answer so fast that I couldn't even read the answers. It's just like, and it was wild. And looking back at it, as I think what's going to happen is the experience inside of launches is going to play a more vital role. And this is something that Laura Phillips, one of our mentorship students, does and talks about. And I remember helping her with her messaging, and she's talking about creating an amazing experience inside of launches. And I was like, yeah, I love that. And I think that's what we were able to do, was by offering a free live interactive workshop where I can answer questions and go through the training and just have fun with people. It created a much bigger experience. Number 2 is what we started to find out is last year, people didn't really know messaging was the problem. People thought their content was the problem. And so we had to do this thing last year where we're leading in with content. Hey, fix your content, fix your content, fix your content. Once they got in, we revealed actually it's your messaging, and they go, oh yeah. This time around, the market finally caught up to what we're selling. This was the most amount of people that I've seen come into our launch that literally said messaging is my problem. They already knew messaging was the problem. So the market sophistication has caught up to what we've been saying for the last couple of years as well. So then before we did that workshop, we decided to do a quiz. What level of market or messaging sophistication are you at? This quiz was designed to show and create a demand gap, show, hey, here's where you're at. Here's where you need to be. So it's not impossible, but it was very difficult for someone to get a 5 out of 5 score on that quiz so that they would say my messaging is perfect. So the majority of people would go through that and realize, okay, I'm here and I need to be here. So in January, we ran the quiz. As soon as the quiz was done, we ran all those people into the workshop, the boot camp. Then we ran ads for a couple of weeks to get people registered for the boot camp, the 2-day workshop. And that was in February. And then we ran and by the way, that workshop was designed to, yes, help them with their messaging, but also create demand for the video series. So once the bootcamp was done, everyone was just waiting for the video series. Then we switched all of our ads to get opt-ins to the video series. So basically it went, January was the quiz, February was the workshop, and then March was the release of the video series and open cart. So if you look back, this is like a 3-month period. So we spent 3 months just working on this. And basically I spent 3 months spending money, and nothing coming back until January or March. And yeah, that was a little scary because we spent $250,000 or more. And I didn't have that much revenue coming in. Like we had some revenue coming in, enough to pay the bills and keep us afloat. Obviously we had savings inside the business and stuff that we used to keep us going. But also you have taxes and stuff. So I had to pay taxes in the middle of all that too. So it was pretty wild. It was pretty crazy. So that was the overview of the strategy. One of the things a couple of the wins that I would say were the biggest wins for us was doing the workshop live, a 2-day workshop as part of our runway was absolutely vital. That was huge for us. It built up so much momentum for the video series. And then when we released the video series was live on March 1st at 6 a.m. But at 8 a.m., we did a live viewing party where I watched the video series with everyone. And then after each video was able to answer questions, give my feedback, make sure the right things were understood by the audience. We had like 400, 500 people watching live with us. That was crazy. 400 or 500 people watched the video series live with us. And that was giving me another opportunity to use influence, persuasion, thought reversals to create demand and all of that stuff for the Video 4X and for the rest of the series and make sure that they understood the right points. Because you know how it is, like people can watch a video series, they can watch a webinar, but when they're consuming something, that information is going through their lens, it's going through their head, and it's going to come out the other side. And you never really know what's going to come out the other side after it goes through their head or their lens. And so doing the live party gave me the opportunity to make sure and reiterate those main points that I wanted them to grasp. And I got to answer questions and stuff like that. So that's the overview of the strategy, a couple wins. Let's get into the numbers. Here are the results. We brought in a total of 444, so 444, triple number, customers. And we did $1,546,099. We spent a total of $242,190,000.41. Our total leads were 23,997. So we were 3 leads away from 24,000 leads. So let's just call it 24,000. Our EPL, so earnings per lead, was $64.42. And this is actually the lowest EPL that we've had on a launch. But what's ironic is it's also the most amount of money that we've made on a launch. But our cost per lead was actually on an average of $10. So the numbers are definitely interesting. Our conversion rate was 1.9%, which is actually what we had on our last launch. I did 900,000 as well. So we had the same conversion rate as the last one. So here's our offer. Our offer was the Video 4X course. And this is like the self-study version. It's if you pay in full, you got a discount. So it was $3,000 if you paid in full, but the normal price was a 6 pay of $579. And then we had a 12 pay of $297 by 12. We had 146 people take us up on the 12 pay. We had 121 people take us up. Sorry, on the 12 pay, 146. On the full pay, we had 121 students. And then on the 6 pay, we had 49. So we had $1 million mentorship program, which is our group coaching program. We had 27 sales on that, which was pretty phenomenal. We are 3 sales away from hitting our limit of 30. So we always try to, since we have a lot of one-on-one interaction and coaching included in that group coaching program, we can only bring on so many students at a time. So we brought in 30 during the launch. Now, here's what's really interesting. I'll talk more about the sales per day and different stuff like that. But what we did is someone didn't buy. So just keep in mind, we had about 300 and something students on the initial launch, right? So the Video Forex program. Well, what we decided was, yeah, we will launch and open again, but there might be people that just want to get started with something now and not go into the full, they couldn't afford the full program or it wasn't the right time, but they wanted something now. So we decided to do a smaller course, release a smaller training just on thought reversals. So the Video Forex is a much bigger program. It talks about connection. It talks about messaging ecosystem. It talks about language patterns. It talks about workflows. It talks about strategies, posting strategies, organic and paid. It talks about, again, connections, what to do, different styles of what to do, different ways to teach without the how to. I mean, it's just so much. And thought reversals is just one little piece. So we decided, hey, let's offer thought reversals to people that didn't buy. And that way they can get started with something. So when we open up Video Forex, they're now in our ecosystem. They're now technically a customer. We will credit their thought reversal purchase to a Video Forex purchase down the road. So they're not really even spending any money or going to be out of pocket anything. And we ended up doing 101 sales off of that. So we had 101 people take us up on the thought reversal course. But here's what's interesting. I got to give credit where credit's due, because James Wedmore told me, hey, when people buy a thought reversal, why don't you upsell them into Video Forex? And I was like, dude, why would we do that? They just said no to Video Forex like a week ago. And he's like, I don't know, just trust me. Like, when people buy thought reversal, just try to upsell them into the Video Forex. We do it sometimes and it works. I was like, okay. So we did it. And out of the 101 thought reversal sales that we had 19 people take us up on joining the Video Forex program. I don't know why that happened, because they had the opportunity to buy Video Forex a week before, but we did 19 sales on the Video Forex program. It was wild. So we did a down sell to non-buyers and then upsold them back into the offer they said no to a week ago. And 20% of people took us up on that. It was crazy. So I believe we did another $150,000, $200,000 off of that upsell, downsell, which was basically almost all of my ad spend back, which is great. So that's kind of the breakdown of the launch. Now, the debrief goes into more details, and we typically will save that debrief, the full details of the debrief for our mentorship students, which we're going to talk about at the next mastermind. So I'm not going to go through all the details because this is a 15-page document of all the details of everything inside of this launch. But I'll tell you, on the final day of our launch, let me make sure I'm reading the right numbers here. On the final day of the launch, where did it go? Yes, cart close day was our best day by far, and we did $506,000. So we did over $500,000 on our final day of cart close. Now, a couple things I want to talk about, and when you're looking at your launches, the cart close day, the last day, will typically be your biggest day, usually, for the most part. And anywhere from like 30, 40 to sometimes even 70% of your sales will come in on that last day. In fact, a friend of mine was having one of the worst launches of his entire life. And going into cart close day, he was sitting at really low, like they would have called it a failure. And then they did $1 million on the last day and completely saved their launch. And I think that was about 70% of the revenue or something like that of the entire launch on the last day. So if you're in a launch, and I see people freak out all the time, it's like they open up cart and it's crickets and nobody's buying, or very few people are buying. They had this crazy expectation and they were attached to the result and it didn't hit whatever they expected. And they start to freak out. But remember, your launches aren't over until they're over. And usually people will wait till the last day to buy. In fact, we did $500,000 on our last day. Now, with that said, generally your cart open day, at least with a video, I'm just going to say with a video series, if you build demand, you create demand, your open cart day will generally be your second best day. Usually, that's not always the case. A lot of times people will get skunked on their first day, no sales, and they'll have a massive end of the day. But if you build demand for your program, generally what will happen is everyone who's been waiting for you to open doors will buy in the first day. Then what will happen is it will slow down drastically for the people that are on the fence or thinking about it to finally commit. So our second day was our worst day by far. And our middle day, so that we open up cart on a Monday and we close cart on a Thursday. So Monday was our second best day. Tuesday, we had 4% of sales come in on that day. Wednesday on March 11th, we had 12% of our sales come in. So Tuesday and Wednesday combined, even if they were one day, we wrapped them both into one day, it was still our worst day. And what will happen is a lot of people will freak out. A lot of people look at that and they'll just freak out. Oh my God, the sales stopped. The sales this, it's not going blah, 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 blah. And they get into fear, they get into worry, and their entire inner state, their vibration, their frequency is out the window. Their willpower to create whatever they want is out the freaking window. So the best thing you can do during a launch is to maintain your composure. This is a lesson that we'll talk about in the next episode. Maintain your composure, keep your vibration and frequency high. Have faith that it's going to happen, and just realize one of two things is going to happen. You're going to get the results you want, and that's awesome. Or you're going to learn the lessons that you need. And either way, I saw a quote this morning that said, you might as well take the risk, because you're either going to get the result you wanted or you're going to become wiser. And that's really what's going to happen here. But just know those last days are always fun. Now you can always offer a downsell as well to bring in some extra revenue, and an upsell. After seeing our downsell, upsell little thing work so well, I'm a firm believer that you should be offering a downsell after every single launch. There's no excuse, and an upsell as well. I also a firm believer that you should be adding a one-click upsell anytime you sell anything. So on the Video Forex program, we didn't offer one-click upsell. I'm kind of kicking myself in the pants that we didn't, because we probably would have made more revenue, and we probably would have brought our EPL up a little bit more. Now, you can do this with a couple different ways. Inside Kajabi, we didn't realize this until we started working our downsell, putting our downsell together, but Kajabi added in one-click upsells. Had we known that before the launch, we probably would have used it. So Kajabi's platform allows you to use that. Samcart is another one that does one-click upsells very easily, but you should be, anytime you guys sell anything online, you should be always offering a one-click upsell. Okay. A couple things. The percentage of sales pretty much matched what we did last year. We just went bigger with it. We spent more money. We went all in. We lived the be, do, have model. I don't know if I have the actual numbers on, let's see if I do. I was just looking to see if I have the actual numbers on affiliate sales. I think affiliate sales probably counted for about 40 to 50% of our sales total, I would say. The rest of them were on our own. Here's a couple lessons that we learned. When we started, when we debrief this, like Taylor goes all out, like everything is detailed. Everything from like, what was our best converting ad? What was our best converting copy? All of that stuff. So when we started to put ads together for the quiz, two things that I wanted to give you, two lessons I want to leave you guys with. We started to put these ads together in December because we were running this in January. Well, our team, I don't know where it came from or who did it, but because we were creating ads in December, someone made a Santa ad. And it's like, take the quiz. And it has a little elf holding a sign that says, take the quiz, and Santa's on it. Well, we were running this in January. So there was a miscommunication somewhere when it was going to be running. I don't know where, but most people would freak out. They would get mad at their team. They would be like, why are we running this? Blah, 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 blah. So I didn't know that this had happened. Obviously, Taylor was running everything. So what Taylor decided to do was to take that and write copy around the ad that said, the Entrepreneur Santa actually comes in January. You want to know why? And then she created some excuse why. and then said something about messaging, take the quiz on your messaging. So we have this Santa ad running in January to get people to go take a quiz about their messaging, but we used the copy around the ad to make it relevant to January. And this was our best converting ad. This is an example of you trusting your team, because I saw this thing running and I was like, why the F are we running a Santa ad? I don't even like it. Even if we ran it in December, I'm like, this is such a stupid ad. I just didn't like it. But you never know what's going to convert. So to me, this is just another lesson in letting your team do their thing. Don't worry about things that aren't problems. And that was our best converting ad. Another, we had two of them for the quiz. Another one, that has a picture of the ocean, and on the picture it says, what level of message sophistication is your content at? Well, you don't want to end a sentence with at the end of it, apparently, because it's a preposition, Matt, or whatever it is. Yeah. So again, like I don't care about this stuff. Like if you've been following me for any amount of times, like we leave typos in almost everywhere. Like there's typos and stuff. I'm just like, just get stuff out there. Let's just not be a perfectionist. Let's get it out there. Let's run it. That was our second best converting ad. Actually, they might've been tied. They were both our best converting ads. I got the most amount of hate on any ad during this entire launch on that ad because people were upset about my grammar, especially since we were talking about messaging, you know, and in their heads, messaging and grammar, basically the same thing, for some weird reason, but not you. You guys know better than that. So anyways, I got the most amount of hate, but I also got the most amount of leads from it. And this is just an example of why messaging is so important. The people that really care about grammar, that so much that they're going to leave a comment on some stranger's ad on Facebook, those people will not do well inside of my program. Why? Because the intro video of my program literally says like, hey, there's going to be typos in here. I would rather get stuff out there quicker, faster, and hopefully it shows you that perfectionism is going to kill your business. So if you see a typo in my program, don't email us. I don't care. Unless there's a typo or something so bad that it literally causes you to not be able to execute on the training, don't email us about it. Just deal with it. And that's the intro video inside of our program. Now, if someone is going to comment on a grammar thing inside of my ad, they're not going to do well inside the Video 4X program. And yeah, there are things inside the program. Sometimes like someone just messaged me the other day and was like, hey, I think you guys forgot to edit part of the video out on module whatever because you're editing some of the slides. I don't think that was meant to be in there. Like, oh, you know what? You're right. Like we will get that fixed. So we do care about, you know, we want things to be nice and have a great experience, and experience is huge for us, but typos are just not something that I care about. And the people that care about that wouldn't thrive inside the program. So that was really interesting. And I think it was a great lesson for everyone because so many people focus on getting things perfect so they don't get haters. And it literally stops you from getting the results. And that's a huge thing that I learned in this launch. And I kind of already knew this, but we saw it on a different level. And this is the thing, when you do a launch to this level, when you like more than double your ad spend and get more than double the amount of people into your launch, the problems get doubled as well. So the haters get doubled, the systems that are weak get more pressure put on them. A lot of that stuff starts to happen. And I'm just a big believer that we need to get things out there quicker. We need to get things out there faster. We need to make sure that we're, you know, like executing on things a lot better, faster, whatever. And this should be proof to you that having typos and that perfectionism, it doesn't matter. It doesn't really affect your results. Had I not ended that ad in a preposition, would our results have changed? Probably not. Like maybe I might have gotten like 20 more leads, but that doesn't really matter. 20 leads isn't going to make a massive difference. We sent out a PDF for our video series, a cheat sheet for our video series. And as you guys know, inside of our brain, shifting perspective is kind of like our tagline, right? Like that's a huge thing that we teach is how to create content and messaging that shifts perspective. Well, we forgot the F in the word shift in the first page of our PDF that went out to 24,000 people. I didn't get mad. We just kind of laughed about it. People laughed about it. People were like, it just makes me realize that like, you're just human like all of us. You're more real and authentic because of it. And yes, we got it fixed. So it didn't say SHIT in it in our download. We fixed it. But the thing is I don't get hung up on those details. And I think inside of this launch, when I know that when we start to double the spend and we're going to get double the problems, I have to be okay with things not being 100% perfect and going out. And by not being okay, it allows me to hit those results. It allows me to put more things into action. I mean, it allows me to test more ads quicker. It allows me to do things more quickly, get more data, and get more knowing a lot faster. And that was a huge thing that we learned inside of this launch. Okay, so let's go a little bit further with this. This is what's really interesting. Out of the 320 sales or whatever it was that we had on the Video Forex program, 122 of them, almost half of them went through our boot camp, our 2-day boot camp. Almost 50% of the sales that we had went through the boot camp. And the boot camp was a month before the video series dropped, and it was 5 weeks before card even opened. And I think so many people neglect the importance of a runway. And I see people all the time going like, well, I did a launch. I had opt-ins to my webinar, but no one showed up for the webinar. And it was like, yeah, well, what was your runway like? So I'm like, I didn't do a runway. I just had an opt-in ad to a webinar and just did this launch. And it's like, yeah, well, no, you didn't build any demand for the webinar. Do something for free that has no pitch. And that's what we did. We said completely pitch free 2-day workshop, not paid, show up live, fix your messaging. And we had 5,000 something people go through that. And almost half of the sales that we had came from that boot camp. And this was so, so important because most people look at that and go like, well, how am I supposed to create demand? How am I supposed to create engagement? People are going to forget about it 5 weeks later. It's like, no, if you know your messaging, you know how to communicate the right way. If you're a Forex student, you should absolutely know this because it's all inside the program. You know how to create demand, you know how to do all that stuff. Then you will have people willingly wait for 4 to 5 weeks for the next thing. They will be hooked to your messaging ecosystem. Now, obviously, you don't want to just leave them cold and dry and just be like, cool, see you in 4 weeks. You're going to have things planned, right? You're going to have exercises and other free trainings and live streams and different stuff like that going on inside a Facebook group or wherever. Podcast episodes, you're going to keep them warm, but you should be doing these warm-ups to your launches. The days of just running an ad straight to a webinar, to a pitch, and hoping that people show up and buy, they're kind of over. Like, is that a true statement 100% across the board? Of course not. But if you are the type of person that is suffering with people not showing up to your launches, not caring, I'm guaranteeing you're not doing a runway properly, or you're not even doing one at all. And this should be proof in the pudding right here. 100. So we have an average, I'm just going to do some math. We have an average customer value of about $4,000. So we did 122 sales. 122 of our sales came from people from the boot camp. So that's $500,000 right there. $500,000 worth of revenue started from that boot camp. So if you guys aren't doing a video series, you're absolutely doing yourself a disservice. So I'm going to give you guys one last stat here, and then we're going to save the rest of this for our mentorship students when we do the full breakdown in our mastermind in a couple of weeks. But the last stat that I'm going to give you here before we wrap up this episode and move into the next episode, which will come out in a week, where we talk about the biggest lessons. The last stat that I'm going to give you, where did it go? I just had it up. I wanted to give you a breakdown of the leads. So we did Facebook ads, we did YouTube ads. Our YouTube ads had a much higher cost to them. So our Facebook ads were much lower. Our YouTube ads were about a $30 cost per lead. But with the YouTube and Google ads, we saw an earnings per lead of $180, and Facebook was much lower. So the quality of traffic from Google and YouTube was a lot higher. Just to give you guys a reference, out of that 24,000 leads, 19,970 of them came in from February 15th to March 5th. So we generated 20,000 leads from February 15th to March 5th, which means 5,000 leads came in before that, which was all the video series, the boot camp, the workshop, the 2-day workshop, and the quiz. But because we were able to scale really fast, because we were able to scale really, really fast and have a couple of weeks of testing things, then scaled a lot. We were able to generate most of our leads between February 15th and March 5th. And the video series was released on March 1st. So even after the release of the video series, we were still running opt-in ads, and then we stopped it right before cart opened. So that's our breakdown. Obviously, there's more stats and stuff that go into it. Things like calls booked. I'll go over that real quick. The last thing I'll give you guys is, if you are not doing on the fence calls inside of your launches, you absolutely must be doing that now. The reason why is because a lot of people, especially if you're in the 2,000, 3,000 or plus price range, that's a big chunk of change for someone just to like willingly go and buy. And a lot of people, even if you're doing really well and $3,000 isn't a lot to you, you have to understand that there's a lot of people trying to build their businesses, and $3,000 is a good chunk of change for people growing their business. And I will never forget that. I remember growing my business, and $3,000 at some times was 6 times more than what I had in the bank. Like we were broke. And when I was in debt, I had $40,000 in debt. $3,000 was a huge amount of, like, it would have been extremely helpful. So I understand that. I realize that, and I'm never going to forget that. And what we decided to do is, we've always done that. We've done this for years, is have on the fence calls. And what this really does is, it's going to help your refund rates, number one, because you're really helping people determine if this is a program that's right for them or not. I don't look at these as sales calls. We call them sales calls, but I don't look at them as sales calls. I look at them as on the fence calls. Like, if you're on the fence, let us help you determine if you're a right fit or not. So one of the things that happened in this launch is we had one person handling calls. That's all we've needed in our past launches. Well, their spots got all booked up within 24 hours of announcing you can book a call. So this right here was the one thing we were the most unprepared for. We had to go to our coaches on our team and just be like, hey, can you guys handle calls this week? And then they all said yes. So I think Beverly Simpson was the first one. She got booked out. She's like, my calendar's booked. And she was within one day. Then Katie Soy, our other coach, got booked out within the next day. And then we had Susan, and she got booked out too. So every time we just had put someone's calendar up there, it was like, they're completely booked out for the week, booked out for the week, booked out for the week. So we had 138 calls, and conversion rate was a little bit low. It was about 52%, but about 72 sales came from that. But that's 72 sales that I don't know we would have gotten had we not done that. And that would have been $300,000. Would have been a big, big difference. So if you're not doing calls, you definitely need to make sure you're doing it. A couple of things that we learned was, I think what we're going to incorporate next time is a better, I guess, not onboarding, but a better upfront process to book a call. There were people on there that didn't realize that these were on the fence calls. Somehow they didn't realize that. I don't know. Some people wanted free coaching. So we need to do a better job of qualifying people that book a call, I think. But we were so unprepared for the amount of demand for these calls that we were just flying by the seat of our pants, just trying to figure out how to make sure that we can get more calls booked. I mean, it was like, there are people posting in the Facebook group like, oh, you guys are all booked out. Do you have any more calls? Well, I'm like, yes, we're working on it. Like, we're trying really hard. And so that was the one thing we were the most unprepared for. So I think that's the last stat I'm going to leave you guys with. And no, it's not actually. Sorry. One more thing before we end this episode. One of the things that I think most people don't realize about launches, and people will tell you like, oh, I need a following before I can launch. I need to have a certain amount of followers and email subscribers. And what they don't realize is a launch is what can grow your business. During this launch, we went from 7,000 fans on Instagram to 10,500. So we gained 3,500 Instagram followers during this launch. So a 50% increase in followers, which I don't really like. I like not having a lot of followers on Instagram because it brought more proof that, hey, I don't have a big following, but we do big sales. Like, our messaging works, but whatever, it's going to happen. So that happened. We added 12,000 people into our Facebook group. We added 24,000 people to our email list. And what else? Our Facebook page also grew as well. And our Content Revolution Facebook group now has 20,000 people in it. So the way I look at this is we're building different assets. What we were able to do in this launch, yes, we made a ton of revenue, but we also added 3,500 people to our Instagram followers. We added 24,000 people to our email list, which is an email list we own. So our email list is now over 100,000 people. I don't even know what our remarketing audience is now, but our remarketing audience, we probably added hundreds of thousands of people. This is people that consume their content, showed some kind of interest. Maybe they didn't opt in, but they definitely consumed our content that we can now remarket to. So Facebook remarketing audiences, Instagram remarketing audiences, people inside of our Facebook group now. So we built way different assets. Like we built multiple assets. So again, email list, Facebook group, following, remarketing audiences all grew tremendously during this launch. And if I was to start all over, I probably would start off just running some content, getting like if my business was gone and they said, okay, you have to start a brand new course and a brand new coaching program, no following, I would probably just start putting content out there using thought reversals, run them as through play campaigns, figure out what messaging is working, what topics are working based off of which thought reversals are getting the best traction. And then I would probably launch, probably wouldn't spend $250,000, but maybe $20,000, $30,000 on a little launch, launching the product. And then what I would do is the following that I gained from that launch would be my new organic audience. So I'd continue organically posting to those people. Now, not only that, our podcast downloads doubled as well. And that's maintaining. We're like 3 weeks past our launch and our downloads, daily downloads have doubled and they're staying doubled. So again, increase in followers, increase in podcast downloads, increase in remarketing audiences, Facebook group, all of that stuff because of this launch. So you have to remember that launching is a way to build your audience. It's not, I have to wait until I have an audience in order to launch. Now, the last thing I'll leave you with is with the podcast, we incorporated our podcast episodes into the launch. So when people opt in, it was like, hey, the video series is starting in like 2 weeks, but here's a podcast episode to give you an overview of what's going on now. And so we just started using our podcast and dropping episodes to people in the Facebook group, in our emails to keep that momentum going. And that resulted in us doubling our downloads. So with that said, that is the debrief. Quick numbers again, $1.5 million. Obviously not all of that is collected. There's payment plans and stuff, but I would say about 40% of that was collected right off the bat. We spent $242,000. Yes, I'm going to have affiliate payouts as well. So I would say 25 to 30% of the money that came in is going back out to affiliates. We did prizes for the affiliates. So I have some stuff like that we have to give them too. So if they hit a certain amount of sales, we're either going to give them like cameras or drones. We also had cash prizes for first, second, third, fourth, and I think fifth place as well. So I don't quite know the numbers on what all the payout stuff would be, but we did well. And, like we brought in a good amount of also reoccurring revenue that's going to be paid out over the next 6 and 12 months as well. So all said and done, the launch was good. For total 444 customers, including the down sales and upsells, 1.5 million in revenue, a little bit more than that one, a little over 1.5 in revenue, not including any upsells we're going to do down the road to those people, 242,000 in ads, 24,000 leads, EPL of $64, CPL of $10, which means we're making $50 on every single lead and a conversion rate of 1.9%. So that's it. So what I want to do is I've learned some huge lessons this launch. We're going to wrap up this episode, but next week we're going to talk about the lessons I learned. There's 8 of them that were huge lessons I learned on this launch that I want to share with you guys that I think will help you on your next launch. So with that said, we're going to go ahead and wrap up this episode and I'll see you on the next episode. Hey guys, thank you so much for checking out another episode of the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, go below, hit the subscribe button, and make sure you click on that bell icon and get notified every time we drop a new episode. Now, if you're looking for the show notes, we have them linked underneath this video, as well as our social media handles and some links to free training and offers that we drop from time to time to help you guys even further. So go check those out if you're interested, and thank you so much for tuning in to the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast.